Hey guys, my name is Mary Jane, and today we are going to continue talking about fillers in the IELTS speaking. So this would be about the use of ums and ahs in your speaking test. So moving on to the next part, we have here our native speaking ums. It is true that it is natural for us to produce the sounds of and ah, especially when we are going to think about something or even when we are thinking. And also, native speakers do the same thing. However, this should be avoided as much as possible in the test because you really want to show the examiner that you can maintain an almost constant flow of speech. So the examiner will allow for a couple of ums, but only in relation to ideas. And even then, you can still fill gaps with language. So it is a language test after all, not an ideas test. And if you're going to use because let's say you're stuck with a certain word and you need to you have to think more about the language, so it will definitely lower your score. So a thing that you need to remember is that any pauses which are language related will also lower your score. So learn to use fillers or ask the examiner to repeat the question so you have some thinking time. Also, one of the things that my mentors have told me is that you can pause for 2 to 3 seconds. So that is actually acceptable, but any pause longer than 2 to 3 seconds might really affect your score. So while you're thinking, while you're having the pause, you're also thinking of a certain or correct word that you're going to use in your speaking. All right, moving on. So let us have the next slide. Okay, so asking to repeat the question. If you need thinking time in part one, ask the examiner to repeat the question. You can do this a couple of times and it won't affect your score. So that is something that some students are really scared to do. They're really afraid to ask the examiner to repeat the questions, but it is actually acceptable. So especially in part three. So in part three, you can ask the examiner to repeat or explain the question. So I think one is probably enough and it won't affect your score. Just don't try to ask the examiner to keep on repeating the question. So I think that will not be a good thing for you. Another thing that you also need to remember is that you really need to be able to prepare ideas for topics. So this is needed if you want to really avoid the use of ums and ahs. So to help avoid ums and ahs, you need to be able to prepare ideas for different topics. So the more prepared you are, the more you have to say. And the more you have to say, the more practice or the more you practice the questions, the fewer ums and ahs you will be able to produce. So I do hope that you keep on practicing and you just really continue to study about different topics for the IELTS. Thank you.